Before we dive into how I systematically dismantled the fraudulent corporate empire my own son and wife stole from me, let me ask you a quick question. Where are you watching or listening from today? Drop your city, state, or country in the comments section below so I can see just how far this story of family betrayal and real-life justice has traveled across the globe. Also, please note that while this narrative is a dramatic audio fiction presentation inspired by real-world family conflicts and corporate greed, every single lesson about financial vigilance, legal leverage, and personal integrity is 100% real. If you believe hard work and loyalty should always triumph over arrogance and deception, hit that like button and subscribe right now so you never miss another powerful story of true justice. I celebrated my 60th birthday on a damp Friday evening in the backyard of the custom 3-story brick and cedar mansion I had spent 15 years building with my own hands. The autumn breeze drifted off the northern ridge, carrying the rich shispook scent of hickory charcoal and slow-roasted honey-glazed ribs across the lawn. Amber paper lanterns hung from the branches of the ancient oak trees beside the patio, casting a golden glow over 80 of the city's most affluent residents. There were corporate banking executives, luxury real estate developers, senior architectural partners, and wealthy neighborhood socialites mingling around the white linen tables. I stood in front of the massive outdoor brick smoker, wearing scuffed leather work boots, faded denim blue jeans, and my favorite canvas barbecue apron embroidered with the words, "World's #1 Dad," right across the chest. In my right hand, I held the heavy steel meat tongs I had used at every family gathering for 2 decades. Looking across that glittering crowd, listen to these laughter, the clinking of crystal wine glasses. A profound sense of gratitude settled into my bones. For 30 years, I had believed every sacrifice, every bruised knuckle, and every grueling 14-hour workday under the scorching sun had been worth it to provide my family with complete security and peace. 30 years ago, when I founded Hendricks Construction and Restoration, from a rusted sedan with 3 hand tools and a $50 loan, I had nothing. I spent my 20s and 30s carrying 80-pound sacks of dry concrete mix through freezing rain, pouring reinforced foundation footings in waist-deep mud, and framing custom roof trusses until my shoulders ached so badly I could barely sleep. Every brick in our Kensington Heights neighborhood, every retaining wall along the ridge, and every custom oak staircase inside the surrounding mansions carried the physical mark of my labor. I looked over toward the dining pavilion. My wife, Chloe, stood near the champagne fountain smiling gracefully as she chatted with the president of the County Historical Society. She looked stunning, wearing an emerald silk evening gown I had flown in from Milan as an anniversary surprise the previous autumn. Beside her stood our 28-year-old son, Paul. He was dressed in a tailored charcoal Italian wool suit, wearing a gold chronograph watch on his wrist and holding a flute of expensive French champagne. He carried himself with the polished, effortless confidence of a corporate executive born into privilege. My chest swelled with paternal pride. I told myself that all the years I spent wearing grease-stained clothes and breathing drywall dust had successfully built a fortress of prosperity. For the 2 people I loved more than life itself. The very first bold heading stamped across the top page made the breath catch violently in my throat. An order of unilateral termination of residency and immediate eviction from premise. I blinked hard, my mind struggling to process the black ink on the white paper. I assumed there had been some clerical mistake from our corporate legal department. I turned my eyes to the second page, then the third. Stamped directly beneath the eviction order was a formal court-filed document, emergency petition for dissolution of marriage and statutory asset forfeiture agreement. As my eyes scanned the dense paragraphs of legal jargon, the world around me suddenly seemed to tilt on its axis. According to the documents enclosed, our custom 3-story brick mansion, the commercial real estate parcels holding our equipment yards, our joint private wealth management accounts, and 100% of the voting equity shares in Hendricks Construction had been formally transferred, assigned, and retitled into a newly formed private holding company owned exclusively by Paul and Chloe Hendricks. Every single dollar, every piece of heavy machinery, and every square foot of land I had spent 30 years building from the dirt up had been completely stripped from my name. I handed the pen and the signed service receipt back into Paul's waiting hand. Then, with slow, methodical precision, I reached behind my back and untied the canvas straps of my apron. I pulled the worn fabric still bearing the proud embroidery, "World's #1 Dad," over my head and folded it neatly in half. I placed the apron directly on the granite prep table right beside the silver serving tray of slow-roasted honey-glazed ribs, which were still steaming with aromatic heat into the cool evening air. I did not say another word to either of them. I turned my back on the bright party lights, the crystal champagne fountains, and the 80 hypocritical guests who had watched my public execution without blinking. I walked straight down the cobblestone driveway, past the rows of imported luxury sports cars, and stepped out through the heavy wrought-iron security gates onto the dark suburban asphalt with exactly $327 sitting inside my worn leather wallet. As I walked alone down the wet, curving sidewalk of the Kensington Heights neighborhood under the light autumn drizzle, every single brick mansion I passed told the story of my life's work. I had poured the reinforced concrete retaining walls for the estate on the corner. I had framed the cathedral ceilings for the Tudor mansion across the street. And as the cold rain dampened my shirt, my mind raced backward through time, forensically retracing the exact events that had enabled Paul and Chloe to steal 30 years of my life with the simple stroke of a legal pen. The devastating answer hit me with crystal clarity: the winter of 2023. Exactly 3 years earlier, during the most severe blizzard our city had seen in 2 decades, I had personally supervised the emergency foundation pour for a municipal bridge project because our site's subcontractors had walked off in the freezing cold. I spent 18 consecutive hours standing in sub-zero slush, ensuring the concrete curing blankets maintained proper thermal temperatures. 2 days later, my lungs locked up. I collapsed on the kitchen floor and was rushed via ambulance to St. Jude Central Medical Center with acute double pneumonia and systemic respiratory failure. For 12 terrifying days, I lay helpless inside the intensive care unit, connected to oxygen monitors and IV lines, while high-strength antibiotics and burning fevers clouded my brain into a hazy, disoriented fog. On the 5th evening of my hospital stay, Chloe had walked into my hospital room, clutching a thick black leather binder to her chest. Her eyes were bloodshot and swollen from what I genuinely believed were tears of marital terror and heartbreak. She sat beside my hospital bed, gripped my calloused hand with her soft fingers, and wept openly against my shoulder. At that exact moment, running 102-degree fever and barely able to breathe, without triggering a violent coughing fit, I looked into the tearful eyes of the woman I loved and saw nothing except sincere, devoted concern for our family's survival. I took the pen she placed into my trembling hand and signed my name on the exact signature tabs she flipped open before me, without reading the fine print at the bottom of the legal clauses. That single signature was the most catastrophic architectural mistake of my entire life. I had not signed a limited, 30-day administrative payroll authorization. I had executed a comprehensive, durable general power of attorney that granted Paul and Chloe unconditional legal authority to purchase, sell, mortgage transfer, and retitle every single corporate and personal asset bearing the Hendricks name. I picked up the blue passbook and flipped it open to the final ledger entry stamped on the inside page. The initial deposit had been made 40 years ago, with $200 from her seamstress earnings. Over the next 3 decades, every single month without fail, my mother had quietly deposited $25, $50, or $100 from her corner bakery profits into this private, interest-bearing account. The final stamped balance entry recorded by the bank teller exactly 60 days before my mother passed away peacefully in her sleep 7 years ago, showed an accumulated, compound interest total of $91,450. I sat frozen on the metal folding chair, staring at that 5-figure number until the numbers blurred through the sudden tears welling in my eyes. To a modern commercial real estate developer, or a high-flying corporate banker like Paul, $91,000 was pocket change, hardly enough to cover the imported Italian marble countertops or the custom landscaping for a single luxury estate project. But to a 60-year-old master builder sitting at absolute rock bottom, inside a cheap transient motel, With only $277 left in his pocket, $91,000 was pure, unadulterated salvation. It was my mother's blood, sweat, and silent, lifelong sacrifice, reaching out across the boundaries of death to hand her son the exact capital hammer and steel nails he needed to rebuild his life from the ruins. I folded the note carefully and placed the blue savings passbook back into the iron box. But, as I slid my fingers across the bottom of the metal compartment to check for loose papers, my thumbnail caught on a thick, stiff edge wedged tightly beneath the felt interior lining. I pulled up the corner of the dark green felt sheet and extracted a large, legal-size parchment document secured with an old brass grommet and stamped with the official embossed seal of the County Registrar of Deeds dated October 14, 1974. I spread the heavy parchment flat across the desk and adjusted the desk lamp to read the dense, typewritten legal description. It was an original warranty land deed of absolute fee simple ownership issued to my late bachelor uncle, Thomas Hendricks. Uncle Thomas had been an eccentric, rugged civil engineer who lived alone in a cabin his entire life and never married. When he passed away 30 years ago, during the early days of my construction career, his last will and testament had bequeathed his only tangible asset directly to his favorite nephew, Robert Hendricks. I grabbed the complimentary motel pen off the desk and multiplied the numbers on the back of the envelope. 12 acres multiplied by $137,000 per acre equaled $1.644. Well, over $1.6 million in pure, unencumbered, debt-free real estate equity sitting directly inside my sole, individual name. And because state inheritance laws explicitly protect premarital and directly inherited separate property from general spousal claims and blanket administrative powers of attorney, neither Chloe nor Paul could legally touch, transfer, mortgage, or sell a single square foot of Uncle Thomas's land without committing federal wire fraud and grand felony conversion. Enjoy your expensive French champagne and your stolen mansion while you can, Paul, I whispered into the darkness of the motel room. You took away the walls I built over 30 years, but starting tomorrow morning at sunrise, I'm going to pull the load-bearing pillars straight out from under your fraudulent feet. I slept for 6 solid dreamless hours with the iron box resting safely beneath my head. At precisely 6 o'clock on Saturday morning, I showered under the motel's lukewarm spray, put on my clean brown duck canvas work jacket, my steel-toed boots, grabbed my canvas duffel bag, and checked out at the front counter. By 8 o'clock sharp, I was standing outside the heavy oak double doors on the 3rd floor of the Kensington Legal Building, pressing the polished brass buzzer for the offices of Bradley, Vance and Associates. Tom paused, picked up Uncle Thomas's yellowed 1974 land deed, and held it up to the morning sunlight streaming through the window. A surge of pure electric triumph coursed down my spine as Tom leaned across his desk. Tom reached into his desk drawer, pulled out a business card, and slid it across the polished mahogany surface toward me. The card read, Silas Vance, Independent Forensic Financial Investigator and Commercial Audit Specialist. Robert, I don't know how to break this to you gently, so I'm going to lay the raw forensic numbers right out on the plywood, Silas said, sliding the first set of financial spreadsheets across the desk. Your son, Paul, is not the sophisticated corporate CEO and master negotiator he pretends to be at the country club. Over the past 18 months, Paul has developed a catastrophic, compulsive gambling addiction tied directly to an offshore internet sports betting and high-stakes baccarat syndicate operating out of Costa Rica under the name Apex Turf Betting Syndicate. According to these offshore clearinghouse records, Paul has lost an astonishing $215.00 on leveraged sports bets and casino wagers over the past 16 months alone, Silas detailed forensically. And here is how he kept those massive gambling losses hidden from you, while maintaining Chloe's lavish lifestyle of Milan shopping trips, country club dues, and luxury sports cars. 14 months ago, right after you signed that hospital power of attorney, Paul secretly executed a commercial second mortgage on your family mansion for $185,000. Through a predatory, unregulated hard money lending syndicate at an extortionate 14% interest rate. The name Margaret Morrison commanded instant, absolute respect across our entire state. Mrs. Morrison was a self-made, iron-willed industrialist who had built a multi-billion-dollar steel manufacturing and logistics empire from scratch after her husband passed away 30 years ago. She was renowned throughout the business community for being a demanding, uncompromising perfectionist who demanded absolute engineering precision, zero construction delays, and complete financial transparency from every contractor she hired. I have the complete forensic audit binder, certified bank wire transfer clearing numbers, and exact copies of Paul's offshore betting ledger sitting on my desk right in front of me. Margaret, I replied without hesitation. And more importantly, I have the complete, original, structural engineering CAD blueprints for your Cliff estate stored inside my personal architectural library, and over $1.6 million in unencumbered, debt-free commercial land equity that I am willing to pledge this afternoon as an unconditional performance surety bond to guarantee the immediate completion of your home under my personal supervision. Just as Paul slammed his phone down in frustration and turned to yell at the union carpentry foreman, a sleek, custom blacked-out executive sedan, accompanied by two corporate security SUV escorts, turned off the main highway and glided smoothly down the access road. The sedan pulled up right in front of the job site trailer. The heavy armored doors clicked open, and Mrs. Margaret Morrison stepped out onto the gravel pathway. She was 70 years old, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal wool business suit and silver jewelry, carrying a silver-handled cane and surrounded by two senior corporate litigators from her industrial empire. Margaret Morrison pointed her cane directly at Paul's chest. That's an absolute slanderous, defamatory lie. Paul shrieked, his voice cracking high with panic, as he looked around at the hostile faces surrounding him. I hold the durable general power of attorney for Hendricks Construction. I am the sole voting equity shareholder. I am the legal owner of this commercial contract, and nobody has the authority to question my internal treasury management. You don't own a single square inch of this commercial contract anymore. Paul, I interrupted, stepping forward beside Mrs. Morrison and pulling a thick court-certified legal binder directly from the pocket of my duck canvas work jacket. I tossed the heavy legal binder directly onto the wooden steps of the job site trailer, right at Paul's muddy feet. Paul stared down at the court-certified revocation documents sitting at his feet, his mouth opening and closing wordlessly, like a suffocating fish out of water. Margaret Morrison turned her gaze back to Paul, her expression devoid of a single ounce of corporate mercy. Margaret Morrison turned her back on Paul without waiting for his response and looked directly at me and the circle of 20 union carpenters. Mike, the union carpentry foreman, stepped forward immediately, his face breaking into a wide, triumphant grin as he extended his rough, calloused hand to me. "Just say the word, Robert," Mike announced proudly on behalf of every worker on the site. Every single carpenter, steel fitter, and machine operator standing on this ridge worked for you for 20 years before this young gambler took over. If you're running this job under your new company name, we're with you 100%, right down to the final nail. "Dad, please," Paul whimpered softly, his voice cracked, his tears of pure legal terror welled in his eyes. "You can't let Mrs. Morrison send those wire receipts to the federal prosecutor. If the U.S. attorney files wire fraud charges, I'm going to federal prison for 10 years. I'm your only son, Dad. Please say something to help me. You aren't a master builder, Paul, and you certainly aren't a corporate king," I said quietly, every syllable vibrating with absolute finality. "You are just a reckless, arrogant gambler who thought he could build a skyscraper by stealing another man's foundation. When you handed me those eviction papers on Friday night and stripped away the 30 years of sweat that fed and clothed your entire life, you permanently severed the foundation between us. I am not destroying you today, Paul. I am simply stepping aside and allowing the mathematical structure of your own actions to collapse right where you stand. Get off my job site." Without another glance in his direction, I unrolled my master structural blueprints across the hood of Margaret Morrison's sedan, signed the new $4.5 million commercial contract with a steady, decisive hand, and got straight to work, rebuilding the kingdom they had tried to steal. Exactly 1 week later, just as I promised you at the beginning of this story, the final, unavoidable structural reckoning arrived with precision mathematical timing at exactly 10:15 a.m. as the commercial banking clearinghouse the state, and Tom Bradley's ex-part asset, freezing injunctions, and the hard money lender's emergency foreclosure notices hit the central banking servers. My smartphone screen lit up and began to vibrate against the oak desk. 4 minutes later, at 10:19 a.m., call number 3 arrived. Hendricks, home. I took a slow, appreciative sip of my hot coffee, turned my chair toward the morning sunlight streaming through the window, and let it ring until the digital connection dropped out. By 11:30 a.m., the incoming calls had transformed into a relentless, desperate digital avalanche. Call number 10, call number 15, call number 22. Interspersed between the incoming calls were frantic, hysterical text messages from both Paul and Chloe, flooding my notification screen in rapid, panicking succession. 11:42 a.m. Dad, please pick up. 2 county sheriffs and 3 repossession tow trucks just backed into the driveway. They hitched up my Porsche and Chloe's Range Rover. The towing dispatcher showed us an emergency court seizure order, signed by Tom Bradley. You have to call Tom right now and tell him to release our cars. 12:15 p.m. Robert, where are you? The private security gate code doesn't work. A process server from the hard money lending syndicate just handed me a 24-hour emergency foreclosure and lockout notice. He says Paul signed a fraudulent second mortgage on our mansion and defaulted on the balloon payment. We're being kicked out onto the street. Please, Robert, answer the phone. I set my coffee mug down on the oak desk, reached over with a calm, unshakable finger, and pressed the glowing green speakerphone icon on my smartphone screen. Dad? Oh God, Dad, you finally answered the phone. Paul wept, his breath catching in ragged, hysterical gasps over the speakerphone. Dad, please, you have to do something right now. They're locking us out of the house. The county sheriffs just put steel padlocks on the wrought iron gates and boarded up the front double doors. We don't have our cars, our checking accounts are completely frozen at zero, and Chloe and I don't even have $50 in cash between us to rent a cheap motel room for the night. Why are you doing this to your own family, Dad? How can you be so cruel to us? I leaned forward across my polished oak desk, resting my calloused hands flat on the wood, and spoke toward the microphone. My voice was completely devoid of anger, gloating, or malice. It was simply the cool, unshakable voice of a master structural engineer, explaining the mathematical inevitability of gravity to a child who had jumped off a roof. I paused for 3 measured beats, letting the absolute weight of those words settle over the speakerphone, while Paul choked on his own tears. Dad, I'm sorry. Oh God, Dad, I was so wrong. I was greedy and stupid. Paul shrieked, his voice breaking into total psychological collapse as the sound of heavy steel padlocks snapping shut echoed over the line. Please, Dad. Tom Bradley told my legal counsel this morning that you own Uncle Thomas's 12-acre commercial tract on the new highway corridor. He showed us the county assessment. It's worth over $1.6 million in pure cash. Please just pledge that land to the bank, or wire $50,000 from your mother's passbook account to clear my hard money mortgage. If you don't help me right now, the U.S. Attorney is filing federal embezzlement charges for the Morrison deposit on Friday morning, and I'm going to prison. You didn't just steal my bank accounts and my house, Paul, I replied calmly, my eyes looking out across the active equipment yards of my new company. You tried to rob me of my dignity, my professional reputation, and the 30 years of blood and sweat that fed, clothed, and educated you every single day of your life. When you and Chloe looked at my calloused, grease-stained hands and decided I was human trash that needed to be discarded onto the scrap heap, you permanently destroyed the moral foundation of our family. I am not destroying you or sending you to prison today, Paul, I stated with final, structural authority. I am simply stepping aside and forcing you and Chloe to stand on the exact same concrete floor you pushed me onto 10 days ago. A true master builder knows that whenever you build a structure out of lies, arrogance, and stolen timber, the roof will always collapse directly onto your own head when the storm winds blow. Enjoy the harvest you planted with your own signature. Goodbye, Paul. I reached over and pressed the red end call button on my smartphone, permanently terminating call number 32 and severing the final toxic link to the people who had betrayed me. Then, with a steady hand and a clear heart, I picked up my silver architectural drafting pen, pulled Mrs. Margaret Morrison's master foundation blueprints across my oak desk, and went back to work doing what I had done every single day of my life, building something strong, beautiful, and true from the foundation up. Over the past 12 months, Hendricks Heritage Restorations had grown with breathtaking speed and unshakable commercial prestige. After our 40-man union crew successfully completed the Morrison Cliffside Estate project, 3 weeks ahead of schedule and under budget, Mrs. Margaret Morrison had personally recommended my contracting firm to every senior corporate industrialist and real estate developer across the state. Today, we operated 4 permanent commercial restoration crews, generating over $12 million in annual contracting revenue while maintaining a spotless, unshakable reputation for architectural mastery and absolute financial integrity. I took half of those liquid capital proceeds, $400,000, and worked alongside Tom Bradley to formally establish and endow the Clara Hendricks Trades and Engineering Scholarship Foundation in eternal memory of my mother. Every single year, our nonprofit foundation provides full vocational college tuition, comprehensive professional toolkits, and guaranteed paid commercial construction apprenticeships for 30 underprivileged young men and women from hardworking, blue-collar families across our city, ensuring that my mother's quiet lifelong devotion to honest labor continues to build strong, independent lives for generations to come. And as for Paul and Chloe, the universe, operating with its own poetic, mathematical precision, had delivered a reckoning far more fitting and symmetrical than any civil court judgment could ever impose. Today, Chloe lives alone in a cramped, second-floor studio apartment above a noisy laundromat in the industrial district. To pay her monthly rent and purchase groceries, she works double 12-hour shifts 6 days a week as a waitstaff hostess and diner server at the Twin Pines 24-hour highway diner, 40 miles outside the city limits. Every single morning, from 6 o'clock until dusk, Chloe is forced to wear a stiff polyester uniform, carry heavy trays of greasy bacon and scrambled eggs across Formica tables, and force a polite, humble smile for the exact same blue-collar truck drivers, union carpenters, and construction laborers she once mocked as human trash at our country club parties, just to earn enough daily tips to keep the electricity turned on in her apartment. My 61 years of life on this earth, through all the grueling struggles, the heartbreaking betrayals, and the ultimate hard-earned victories, have taught me one absolute, unshakable structural truth. A person's true human worth and foundation aren't written across corporate bank ledgers, stamped onto legal property titles, or displayed inside the tailored threads of an expensive Italian suit. True wealth and unshakable power reside entirely inside the integrity of your character, the honest craftsmanship of your hands, and your unwavering loyalty to the people who stood by you during the dark storms. You can lose every single dollar inside your wallet, every brick inside your mansion, and every formal title attached to your name, but if you hold fast to your dignity, your work ethic, and your inner truth, you can rebuild a kingdom from the ashes any day of the week. Never let arrogant, greedy people measure your worth by the grease stains on your cuffs or the age on your face. When the hurricane winds blow, the glittering castles built on deception and arrogance will always collapse into fine dust, but the man who stands firmly on the foundation of honest, unshakable integrity will always walk through the darkest storm and come out a king. If you listen to my story all the way to the very end today, I know that you are someone who deeply values genuine honesty, unwavering loyalty, and the quiet, unshakable inner strength that cannot be bought or sold with money. Please take just 2 quick seconds right now to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notification bells so you never miss another powerful, inspiring story of real-life family justice and moral resilience. Also, please head down into the comment section right now and tell me your thoughts. Did Robert do the right thing by refusing to answer Paul's desperate pleas on that 30-second phone call and letting his son and wife face the full, unvarnished consequences of their own greed? Or do you believe a father should always step in to rescue his family, no matter how cruelly they betrayed him? I read and value every single comment you write. Until next time, stay humble, work hard, protect the people who truly love you, and always remember that the finest, most powerful suit any human being can ever wear is integrity.